So I want to announce the next speaker, who is Jason Freeny. We discovered his work a few years ago. He does very strange and almost irritating work, I would say. So I'm curious to see what's the background about that. Please welcome Jason.
All right, thank you. I studied industrial design at Pratt in Brooklyn. I always wanted to be a painter. Painting is hard. Sculpture always came to me naturally. These are probably my biggest influences if I want to pick artists that influence. Escher, Petty is a well-known pinup artist. Warhol, Wittgenstein, Herring, and Dali, a lot of surrealism, a lot of pop. I would say the person that had the most influence when I moved to New York would be Robert Williams. He originally a cartoonist, a comic book artist, and I went to one of his shows and saw his paintings, and I was just amazed at the freedom he had, no holds barred, just no subject matter was taboo, the fact that he could tell a story in one single image was it totally inspired me. Maybe I was studying industrial design at school, and I'm like, I want to be an artist. So, this industrial design stuff will have to be put to the side. But I continue. This is my very first character that I created that would have any kind of reoccurring in the work that I do, and it was inspired by a Robert Williams painting. That's his robot, and I really wanted to emulate Robert Williams. I think a lot of artists, find artists that they like, and want to emulate them. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as you eventually find your own way, your own feel. This is Power Tripping Robots. This is sometime around my sophomore year in college. I decided that I was done partying and doing drugs and just not going to class. So I locked myself in my room and I sat and I just did drawings like this for like 2 years straight. This is probably 3 months of just closing off the world and drawing. This is my very first paid illustration for International Tattoo Art magazine. I got paid a whopping $100 for it, and it probably took me 2.5 weeks to do, but when you're starting, you want to get out there, so there's that. This is my first time I took an existing character and manipulated him. I always, Mickey Mouse is part of our psyche, part of our society, but he never dies. And I wanted to explore how would Mickey die? I don't even think he's dead in this illustration. He's just, what are you doing to me? He's just kind of hanging out there. Another one, Splat. This was the balloon dog that I did in the piece with the robots a little time earlier. Just sitting in my house, I wanted, what if this was a real thing? What if this is a real animal? And this is the first time that I really dove in and tried to discover, what these fictitious things would look like on the inside. But the most enjoyable part of it was really, composing it was a lot of fun, but really just watching. I don't know what it looks like before it happens. I let the outside shape dictate what the skeleton is going to look like, what the anatomy is going to look like. So it's a discovery to me as it happens, and I'm always fascinated by these weird, grotesque shapes that happen. It was followed up by the gummy bear. This one probably is the one that got the most attention and kind of started me. Let's do a whole series of these things. I started looking at toys. I started looking at food. I started looking at candy. This is the Immaculate Confection. This is the fetal development of a gummy bear. Starts off as a as a gumdrop. So now whenever I have gumdrops, I keep thinking they're gummy bear fetuses. Just more exploration on the gummy bear. This is "You Are What Eats You." And I started going into more characters that already existed. There's always a fear, and I still have the fear of using other people's intellectual property. So you have to tread lightly. But I've been surprised to find that 90% of the characters that I do, the companies that own the rights to them are either they like them or they look the other way. I've gotten one or two nasty emails, but they're very far in between. But I've been very surprised that they're being very accepted. Gingerbread man. I have a spinning animated GIF of this as well. I didn't put it up. I don't know why, but it's really cool because he's very, very thin, and when you see him from the side, and all that anatomy packed in. This was contracted by Wired magazine. This was Sackboy. I don't know if, from Little Big Planet. If anybody recognizes him, they've flipped him. He's backwards, so all his anatomy is backwards. They took some artistic freedom. Kind of bugged me, but and anybody that knows anatomy will look at that and go, "Oh my God, that's backwards." This is Cootie, a toy that I had when I was little. This was probably the most fun I had in doing one of these illustrations because I explored, it wasn't just the anatomy, there's the transmission, how when it catches a cootie, the treatment, which I didn't know about when I was little. When I was doing the illustration, everybody started telling me, "Oh, what about the circle, dot, dot?" So did some research on that, and they injected that in there. But I really enjoyed coming up with the metamorphosis of, the egg going into the larva and the pupa and then into the adult. This is gloved head. This is, not everybody knows what this is, because my doctor would do this. He would blow up a latex glove and put a face on it to make, for the kids to be show them up in the doctor's office. I have to explain this to a couple of people. Not everybody's doctor did this, I guess. This is a goldfish cracker. This is a goldfish sashimi. Just imagining these things if they were real. I did some time, I didn't do some time, but I worked at, maybe it was doing time. This is, when I was at MTV, I was working in their special events department, and I did a lot of props and stage set designs, and I did like 4 or 5 trophies for them. But this is when I first started bringing sculpture in. This is in the late 90s. They wanted for TRL. I don't know if anybody could watch TRL, but it was teeny bop music show where they would play the big hits, and all these kids, school kids, would gather outside of the studio in Times Square and pull up signs, and "I'm here." And so they wanted a trophy that reflected one of their fans. They told me to use Britney Spears as a guide, and we had at least 4 meetings on the size of her breasts. This ended up being designed by committee, and it ended up looking nothing like this when it was all done. It ended up being like I made out of poser, and it had to be a little boy, and it was all had to be PC. And yeah, it's. This was my first anatomical sculpt inside a toy. I had been working at a startup, and it tanked because it ran out of funding. So looking for a job for at least a year, found nothing, and I decided that, all right, I got to do something for money. So I'm like, I threw it together, and I figured whatever I got for it would be more than I had the day before. So it ended up going beyond my expectations. So I started doing the sculpts. This is My Little Pony. These are a bunch of giant Lego men. These are actually about 20 inches tall. Hands down the most popular, most requested pieces that I've done. People keep asking for them. I'm kind of burnt out on them, so I'm trying to move on to other things. This is the fetus of a Lego man. This is Hello Kitty's fetus. This was interesting because I've done pieces, and then I'll get an email and I'll see like I did Stewie from Family Guy, and then I get an email and it's from 20th Century Fox, and I open it up and it's just the nastiest, most we're gonna sue you. You are give us all every penny you've made from this, whatever, all your molds, whatever. They just didn't get that it was a sculpture. There was only one. So I did this, and then I get an email from Sanrio, the people that do Hello Kitty, and I'm like, oh great, here we go again. And I open up an email, and they're like, how do we get this? So they ended up buying it, and now it's on display at Sanrio. So Sanrio is actually pretty cool. This is a Barbie that I just did. People have always talked about how Barbie's proportions, what her skeletal structure would be. It would be grotesque, and as it turns out, it is. Her neck is just out of this world. This was a Ron English toy, and I was asked to by a Japanese toy company to do a custom for a Ron English tribute. So I picked a different toy. No, those have all been chosen. The only one left is this. So I'm like, okay, and it's not the most attractive toy, but I'm like, all right, here we go. So I did it, and then I went to the show in Japan, and Ron loved it so much that he ended up doing a painting of it. This is Cupidor. This is me trying to mix things up. I'm trying to move more away from the quarter cut and getting more creative in the ways that I go into the anatomy. I wanted to do a whole bunch of doors over this guy with like on the side of his head and his legs, and but it proved to be a lot more challenging than I thought it was. So I just stuck with the chest door on this guy, and the next one I will get a little more complex. This is Iron Baby, just doing some faux finishing and making it better. This is Mama Egg and a Baby Yolk. These are some nesting dolls. I like the simple shape, so I made some simple shaped skulls. Inside. Cone head. Moose. This is inspired by my cat who passed on last year. This is